Bear with me as I provide the necessary context. I am a 26-year-old male who has always been close to my family. I used to live with my parents and older sister until I turned 18 and left for college. Growing up, I despised our hometown and longed to escape its confines. The only thing that ever brought me back was my family. They were my anchor. Even after my sister moved out, I would occasionally return and stay with her in her separate apartment whenever I visited town. We shared a deep bond, having confided in each other since childhood. However, my world shattered when my sister revealed her engagement news. What made this revelation even more painful was the identity of her fiancé, the very person who had tormented me throughout high school. Bullied felt like an understatement. He had subjected me to relentless torment, pushing me to the point of panic attacks and multiple emergency room visits. I had made official complaints against him, but he always managed to evade consequences. My parents and sister were aware of my ordeal. They tried their best to help, but the scars ran deep. The shock of my sister's engagement was overwhelming, feeling like an outright betrayal. I couldn't fathom how she could be with someone who had caused me such immense suffering. In that moment, I couldn't even look at her. I fled our parents' house, desperate to escape the suffocating grip of panic. I spent that night in a hotel, ignoring frantic calls and messages from my family. The next day, I decided to face my family, knowing they must be worried sick about me. I reassured them that I was physically fine, although emotionally shattered. My sister began to explain how she reconnected with her fiancé after returning to town. She claimed he had apologized for his past behavior, a hollow gesture considering the horrors he had put me through. What stunned me even more was the revelation that they had been together for over 3 years, a period during which she never mentioned him. I felt a surge of betrayal as I realized she had shared her life with my tormentor while keeping me in the dark. When my parents expressed their disapproval, I felt a glimmer of hope that they would understand my pain. To my relief, they sided with me, questioning my sister's judgment. She grew defensive, urging us to move on from the past, a plea I found utterly absurd given the trauma he had inflicted on me. She expected me to tolerate his presence at family gatherings, but I couldn't. I bluntly told her she couldn't marry him, regardless of how irrational or stubborn I sounded. I found it unimaginable to accept him as a part of my family. When I confronted my sister, she adamantly refused to end her engagement, dismissing our conflict as a petty feud. Her words cut deep, especially considering she knew the extent of my suffering. Realizing I couldn't change her mind, I gave her a straightforward ultimatum. She had to choose between her fiancé and me. I couldn't bear to be a part of her life if she married him. She argued that my demand was unfair, professing her love for me. I acknowledged the truth in her words, but I simply couldn't fathom having that man in our lives. In the end, she chose him, tearfully explaining that she didn't want to make this choice, but felt compelled to. I told her I loved her, but declared that she would never see me again. I wished her well and walked away. Over the years, my parents kept me updated on her life events, including her wedding and the birth of my twin nephews. Despite my desire to meet the children, I couldn't bring myself to do so. Several years passed without any contact from my sister until one unexpected day when she called me. I picked up, concerned that something might be wrong. Strangely calm, she expressed her longing to reconnect. I admitted missing her too, but I reiterated my unwavering stance regarding her husband. She proposed that he would apologize if given a chance and insisted they both wanted me back in their lives. Despite my reservations, she urged me to meet my nephews. Caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, I hesitated. Before I could respond, she revealed her immediate need for help babysitting the kids, emphasizing that I was her only reliable option. Feeling cornered, I questioned my reliability, as I had never even met her children. She assured me they were prepared to apologize and reconcile, emphasizing the importance of having their uncle in their lives. Feeling overwhelmed, I asked for time to think. I admitted my desire to meet my nephews, but expressed my discomfort with suddenly being entrusted to babysit kids I had never met before. I told her to give me space, promising to revisit the conversation later. I grappled with my decision, wondering if I was wrong for not wanting to babysit my nephews due to my unresolved issues with her husband. Feeling guilty about declining my sister's request, I sought solace in a conversation with my parents. They reassured me that, while they accepted my sister and her kids, they couldn't embrace her husband into the family. Their support meant the world to me. Opening up to them about my dilemma, I expressed my remorse for not helping my sister. That's when they disclosed that she had recently lost her job, causing financial strain. It became clear they were struggling and needed a free babysitter, with me being the first choice. I inquired about her husband's situation and why he couldn't assist. My parents revealed he had never held a job for more than 3 months, and his family had cut ties due to fights. Oddly satisfying was the realization that my high school bully had become a non-contributing member of society. While my parents advised against babysitting, the final decision lay with me. Despite my initial determination to help, I wrestled with the fact that my sister only contacted me out of necessity. It felt incredibly selfish, making me wonder if her husband's influence was at play. The internal struggle persisted since her call, but ultimately, I knew I couldn't accept her offer. Summoning the courage, I called my sister to decline, even though I felt compelled to apologize. She questioned my refusal, prompting me to explain that being near her husband triggered painful memories. She grew upset, accusing me of dwelling in the past and being stubborn. I firmly told her she didn't know the whole story, emphasizing her lack of right to judge my decision. She coldly told me to stop whining about a little bullying and move on. I was seething with anger because she had witnessed my panic attacks caused by her husband. I confided in her about my suicide attempt, something our parents had kept from her because she was away at college at the time. After hearing the full extent of my pain, she was left speechless. I laid out the reasons why I couldn't be near him and accused her of being insensitive for forcing me into that situation. She promptly apologized, but it fell flat for me. I felt like her apology came too late. She should have supported me long before knowing the truth. Reminding her that she'd had chosen her husband when I asked her to decide, I told her she needed to let me go. She couldn't have everything and everyone. I couldn't understand why she would marry such a horrible person after everything he had put me through. To me, both she and her husband were reprehensible. She should have stood by me, making her equally culpable. I commended our parents for standing by my side all this time. Now, shifting to our second story, my closest friend is getting married in Sicily this August with less than a year's notice. I was asked to be a bridesmaid, but I'm starting to feel unappreciated. Despite their wealth, my friend, who doesn't currently work, has invited people from all over the world. My little sister was uninvited due to guest list cuts. They chose a 5-star hotel for the venue, expecting guests to pay for their own accommodations from Thursday to Monday. Moreover, there's a Shabbat dinner, but the bridal party isn't invited because there's not enough space. When I raised concerns, the bride shrugged it off, saying it wasn't a priority for her fiancé, who cited the cost. She later posted about services being available at a price, making me question her appreciation for her guests' efforts. We wore our old gold jewelry and shoes. She didn't provide an itinerary or any planned events for the bridal party during the 5 days. This wedding was estimated to cost between $5,000 and $8,000 Canadian dollars, not to mention the week of unpaid time off work. She believed she only had to cover expenses for the wedding day and considered the rehearsal dinner a gift. The bride and groom didn't feel obligated to make the bridal party and guests feel appreciated. They were also planning a $50,000 safari for part of their honeymoon. I have been deeply involved in the wedding planning, even organizing the entire baccalaureate party. However, my efforts were marred when my friend relayed a negative comment from one of her friends about the baccalaureate location after I had already planned the trip. When I expressed feeling unappreciated, she did apologize, but it left me questioning my decision. Am I the asshole here? My friend's family and others are advising me not to go, considering the substantial cost of $5,000, plus a week of lost wages, and being entirely on someone else's schedule. They suggest I apologize with vague comments about wishing them the best but explaining I won't be able to make it. They're convinced that I shouldn't go, arguing that I shouldn't spend such a significant amount on something like this. Furthermore, taking time off or losing a week's pay for this event seems unreasonable. While I'm willing to go to great lengths for my best friend, it appears she's expecting too much without considering the financial impact on me. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit the like button. Let's dive into our next story. I, a 31-year-old female, met Lisa, a 36-year-old female, in my accounting class, and we bonded as adult students. Lisa was severely behind on her homework due to a pipe break at her place. She and her 2 daughters had to shower at a hotel on weekends and make do with sink wash-offs during the week. Despite her challenging situation, she took on 7 classes this semester to graduate on time in May. She asked if I could stay with her at school for a homework session. I explained it was uncomfortable for me and invited her and her daughters over for a joint homework session and playdate at my home. She expressed her gratitude and said she would bring a pizza for the kids, planning to arrive at 6:30 p.m., excited to cook curry chicken and rice. I started preparing before her arrival. However, she showed up earlier than expected at 5:30 p.m. I had made enough for her, myself, and my neighbor along with their kids, who were fans of my cooking. I hadn't prepared anything for my son and my classmates' kids, as my son had expressed a preference for ramen, and she had mentioned bringing pizza. When she arrived, she immediately went upstairs to use the bathroom. It was slightly awkward, but I brushed it off. However, I noticed she hadn't brought any pizza, so I inquired. She explained she got her 2 daughters Wendy's instead. I asked her daughter's age, and she said 5, although she looked older and taller than my son. The mom corrected her, stating she was 3 and had a speech impediment. Despite noticing the kids asking for food, I didn't offer them my leftovers, thinking it wasn't my responsibility. Later, the kids expressed their reluctance to leave, and the mom asked if they could spend the night. Overwhelmed, and considering it was a weekday, I declined. Am I the asshole for not sharing my leftovers, which consisted of 1 piece of chicken, rice, and veggies, and refusing to let them spend the night? I did provide the kids with snacks like popcorn and Oreos. She mentioned the 9-year-old's Wendy's meal had been accidentally thrown away. Second edit. I invited her over for dinner, but she declined, citing her class that night. I suggested the kids could come over when she attended class instead of staying with their dad. This was what she had told me about their routine. After discussing her situation, she revealed they were homeless and washed up at school due to broken pipes. She asked to stay overnight, but I declined. Am I the asshole for not helping her and her kids in this situation? Many have suggested calling child services. In our 4th and final story, my family has always been well off, enjoying frequent vacations. However, when my dad recently booked a trip to Italy, there was an oversight regarding my wife. In a family group chat buzzing with excitement, I called my dad to thank him for including my wife, who had often felt left out. To my surprise, my dad informed me that he had booked the available seats, leaving no room for my wife. He hadn't considered her in his plans. I now realize many might consider this a mere mistake, but I disagree. This exclusion isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern. My wife has been overlooked in various ways before. If it were genuinely a mistake, my dad would have made every effort to rectify it before the vacation was announced. My heart sank when I realized my wife had once again been disregarded. I glanced at her. She could sense something was amiss. That's when I firmly told my dad to give my seat to someone else. If she wasn't included, I wouldn't be going either. In the past, I used to find ways to include my wife, but I was weary of always having to advocate for her. They never did this to my sister and her husband. They were always included as a couple. But when it came to my wife and me, we always had to find our own way in, as if we weren't taken seriously. I decided I wouldn't do that anymore. This time, I drew a hard line in the sand. This man had the audacity to suggest that my wife and I could book our own flight and just meet them there. My response was a resounding no, and I hung up. Needless to say, my wife was in tears, upset but also relieved that I stood up for her. A couple of days passed, and my wife and I decided to embark on our own vacation to a more modest location. A large rental cabin with her family, who are incredibly supportive. When my family found out, they bombarded my phone with messages. My mom even called, telling me I was being unreasonable. According to her, it was just a simple mistake on my dad's part, and I could easily book a separate flight and plan an entirely different vacation with my wife. I explained to her that this was about the consistent exclusion of my wife from every family-related event since our marriage. My mom dismissed my concerns, calling me crazy and insisting I was overthinking the situation. Despite her words, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this exclusion than met the eye. Thank you all for your overwhelming support. My wife and I had a heart-to-heart discussion about our next steps. We decided to have a family meeting with my relatives this Monday and confront them head-on. We believe it's the best way to address the situation and seek honest answers from them. Many of you mentioned gaslighting, and we intend to learn more about it to protect ourselves better. I made a promise to my wife when we got married. She would always be my priority. I intend to keep that promise. Thank you once again for your support, and I hope to provide you with an update soon. Best wishes to all.